of the night, and Wycliff Bichang'A, who is a certified public accountant that is at ISPAC, is gracing our studio once again. And with the third reading of the finance bill still in Parliament tonight, as we promised, we are here to follow up on the amendments that have been made today with regards to the recommendations that ISPAC presented to Parliament. Welcome back to KUTV, Wycliff.
Thank you.
We're glad to have you here. So with all that is happening now, I'm sure you have maybe listened to maybe what's going on in Parliament at the moment. They are voting. So far, do you think you're content?
What we know is that, yes, the third reading, the MPs have got to vote for specific clauses, because then we know after this, the bill will now go to the president for assent, and then it becomes a finance act.
Right.
So what I've seen so far is that most proposals, most amendments that have been presented by the finance committee, they are getting voted in. So we know that that process is still ongoing, but I think we can be confident that most of those amendments that were proposed by the finance committee will finally get the nod if what has happened so far this afternoon is anything to go by.
Now, the only reason why a finance bill exists is because the government needs to finance both recurrent and development expenditure, right? Yes. And we also don't want to sink into debt. How can we make it, how would I put it? Why should Kenyans accept this basic knowledge that they are in safe hands?
I agree with you that government has got to raise money to meet the expenditure, and it falls in both development and recurrent expenditure. And last week we saw the reading by the CS, a 3.67 trillion budget.
Yeah.
So obviously it needs money to be financed. But I think what Kenyans are asking, why is it not possible to reduce expenditure? Because we've seen our budget grow year in, year out. We agree things are going up. But if we are constantly saying that we do not have enough money, why don't we consider reducing expenditure? It was expected that this being a hustler government, so to speak, there was expectation that we were going to do things a little bit hustler, so as we do not get into a further hole. Because we now have high expectations. We now expect to collect about 2.6 trillion in taxes, which we ask ourselves whether it is really possible. We doubt whether it is going to be possible, even with the new raft of measures that are going to happen. But again, when you have a deficit of about 700 billion, you will expect that we are going to cut on that deficit by probably reducing expenditure. And when you look at the tone, what has happened, we have really not felt that this government is determined to reduce expenditure in any way. You saw what was going on social media yesterday when we had about a fleet of 100 guzzlers in the presidential entourage. That is when you realize that really there's no motivation to reduce expenditure. But yeah, it is what it is, and I think we still have to fund the budget.
But would you say that with now the target to raise at least 2.6 trillion to meet these financial year's target, are we living beyond our means now as the government and Kenyans?
We are, but unfortunately this is what we've done for a long time now. I cannot remember. In fact, I do not think there's a time that we've had a balanced budget. We've always had a deficit budget. We've always lived beyond our means. We hope one day we'll be able to generate enough revenue, but I think it's high time for us to start thinking about reducing expenditure so that we're able to match the expenditure versus the revenue, rather than hoping every year that we're going to get there. We're going to get there because we're now in a very awkward situation where government is competing with citizens in borrowing in the local market. It's not, we are in that situation where you can easily walk to a bank and the bank denies giving you a loan to be able to start a business because it is getting better rates from the government and it is risk-free lending to the government. And all this is happening because there is that appetite to borrow by the government. So when you look at it at the end of the day, the implications are dire economy-wise.
All right, now the housing levy is still taking center stage even in Parliament. It is the 76th clause, depending on where somebody went to English class. But Azimio has asked this question, and I want to pose this to you again, that the housing fund deductions at the rate of 1.5% is better off being dealt with, being put under the table. So what do you make of that? Do you support that the finance bill should be scrapped off, or should we carry on with it?
The issue with the housing levy, I think there was that bit of clause 11, which the chair of the finance committee proposed to amend to allow the contribution by the employer to be tax allowable. I think that amendment got a nod. And now what is in clause 76, I think, is now whether we're really going to have this levy and at what rate. What my personal view, and we spoke about this last time, is that housing levy, we do not yet have a mechanism of running it. If you look at it, what are the regulations running it? How is it going to run? We still do not know. In fact, we do not even know where it is anchored at the end of the day. Who is responsible? My view is that because it's possible that the originators of this idea had a very brilliant idea, but again, we've not really understood it. It has not come out very clearly. My view, and if I had the ability to mobilize the members of parliament, is that the whole levy thing is gotten out of the bill, probably reintroduce it later once you've got a framework of running this levy. Because you do not want a levy that does not have a framework of running it. Where we sit, it doesn't make sense. You remember we had a situation where even the PS was not really able to explain at what point as a contributor am I going to get a house. There's even another question that if I'm a wife and my husband, so husband and wife are contributing to the levy. So are we going to get two houses at the end of the day, or are we going to get one? There's even a question of if I already have a house, at what point will I get this house? I mean, for what value? So all these are questions that Kenyans are asking, and my hope was that the housing levy story was actually going to get out of the bill until that point where we're able to answer all these questions, and then it can always be introduced. And again, another question you were asking, why is the hurry? Why is everyone in hurry to have this in? We hope someday we'll get these answers.
All right, now we are in the third reading of this finance bill. The first reading, the second reading has passed. Parliamentarians, that there were 176 members of parliament that passed that bill in the second reading, and 81 were against it. Now, should this housing fund pass the third reading, which chances are high, what should Kenyans expect? How should they prepare themselves for what is ahead of them?
Unfortunately, Kenyans will not have another chance to have a review of this, but I think what Kenyans will have to do is be vigilant. It is important to know that this is still your money. It will be very good for Kenyans to always open their eyes and really demand to know what is happening with that levy, to even know, to even get the government to make sense out of this whole scenario. So it will be, it's not, all is not lost. It is still as Kenyans, we have that right to be vigilant and a demand for answers on areas that are really grey.
Do you think it's possible at this time, now that it being reduced to 1.5%, them getting back their money after 7 years, as had been promised to the 3% housing levy, do you think it's possible for them now to get clarity at this point, now that they will not get back their contributions anymore, that 1.5% is gone?
The funny part is, because I read the report by the Finance and Economic Planning Committee, their comment on this issue was that they have now revised the rate from 3% to 1.5%. They did not comment about the other issues that accompanied this levy, about the 7 years, about getting your money back. That they did not cover. But I still hope, because if it is silent, then it means the initial provisions in the bill have been retained, and what they are seeking to amend is the rate from 3% to 1.5%. Now, and if you remember the last time we were here, we were trying to calculate, we were trying to see 3% subject to a maximum of 5,000, how much money does this get to at the end of year 7? We realized that it's a partly I think 60,000 for 10 years. We worked with the 10 years. It was 600,000. Now we've reduced the rate further, so that figure then goes down. Now, as to whether that money makes sense to build a house, as to whether that money makes sense to be refunded, and again, the bill does not even talk about interest. So it is, as I said earlier, it is a very, very gray area. It's one of those laws that are passed, and you wonder, how is it going to be implemented? I actually see a challenge in implementation.
All right, now, will taxing Kenyans help with the current economic situation in the country? The country is battling with tough economic times. Will this really bring down the cost of living, now taxing Kenyans?
Taxing Kenyans, I think, and Kenyans do not have a problem with being taxed if they're being taxed fairly. Because they all understand that we've got to build this country.
Yes.
I think the issue is fairness and also putting into good use the money that is collected. And I tend to believe that in Kenya, our biggest problem has always been an expenditure problem. That the money we get in, who takes care of it? The same way that we have Kenya Revenue Authority, which is very keen on collection, to the extent that some businesses feel pressed too much, we should also have someone looking at the expenditure bit. For example, when you go into the budget given by various MDAs, various ministries and departments, has anyone really interrogated that, do we really need X amount that is contained in this budget? I still believe it's about time we start having the expenditure conversation in this country.
Now, I would love to know where you stand with this. The government is now 9 months in, and I understand that not many projects have been done or completed in 9 months' time. But now with the budget reading, and now the financial year 2023-2024 is about to start, should we expect this to be systems go for government? Like, is this going to change the way the country is at the moment?
Unfortunately, government systems do not work like that. You cannot say that we now have a new budget. Yes, we understand this is the first budget for this regime. And they may say that for the 9 months they've been in power, they've been living on other people's budget, a budget that was drawn by the previous regime. But there are those things that they have to deal with that are coming from the past. We know that there's a big problem with pending bills. Pending bills have not been paid. We have a lot of pending bills, and now unfortunately, those are those things that tie the economy. Because if you've not paid, we know that government is the biggest spender in Kenya. So if government is not paying its suppliers, and I'm told this is over a tune of I think a trillion. So over a trillion is tied up in pending bills. Those suppliers owe other people. So those suppliers need to pay other people. What that means is that we now have a cash shortage in the country, which becomes very difficult for us to get out of. If the pending bills were to be paid, there's a way that opens up the economy, because now we have got more people having money to spend, and that trickle down cannot be underrated. So yes, we have a new budget. Government can now spend this, hoping they're able to collect, because remember, the money that is the revenue budgeted for is projected. So we hope that they're able to collect and spend. But my hope is that a lot of it is going to resolve the issue of pending bills, which is a real problem in this country.
In the budget that was read last week, what do you think should have been given priority, or did your recommendations get priority in that budget that was read last week as ISPAC?
My expectation, again, I will repeat, was that we are going to have a budget that was lower. I think last year we did 3.3 trillion.
Yeah, 3.2.
My expectation was that we were going to maybe match that 3.2 and not go up. But we got about 0.4. That's 4 billion more, which then tells you that we're still living in a bigger hole. So my expectation, all the allocations that happened, my expectation was that they are going to be lower than they were, because we're trying. I mean, how do you get out of a hole? Today, Anne, if I came to your house and you told me that you're having trouble paying school fees, we'll have to think of, do we change the school, do we change what we eat in the house and stuff like that. But we didn't see that. There was an increase in the budget, and therefore I will not say that my expectations were met.
Thank you so much, Wycliff, for your contributions on this conversation. I understand that it doesn't end here, and that reading is still in Parliament. We're looking forward to having you again to get more insights from you and your team.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.